How's it going, everybody? This is the Nitty Gritty. My name is Chad. With me is Leonard. This is a show about wrestling. And in the past, we have done some random reviews, maybe matches on their own. We've reviewed an episode of an old territory. And this week, we're going to be reviewing, not rebooking or anything like that. We're going to be reviewing a indie show, specifically one of the Eddie Gilbert Memorial Brawls. And before we get to the show itself, Leonard, do you want to share any thoughts on Eddie Gilbert himself?
Oh, you know what? Eddie Gilbert was one of those wrestlers that back when I was, a kid and reading like the aftermaths that I would read about him, but he wasn't really wrestling for any of the territories I was watching. And so Eddie Gilbert was one of those guys that was kind of a mystery to me, while at the same time I had a notion that he was really good. And in later years, when I've been able to watch some of Eddie Gilbert's stuff, I did think that he was very good in the ring. And also, too, I know that he was a booker. You know, when you talk about the random shows, that the random show that we watched was from Continental Championship Wrestling when Eddie Gilbert was booking.
Right.
And it should be mentioned that his assistant booker was Paul Heyman. And Paul Heyman learned booking under Eddie Gilbert. So Eddie Gilbert died in a car crash, if I remember correctly, and died young. And I think that's a shame, because I think that's one of those great what if question marks in wrestling. Because I think even though Eddie was very much a veteran at the time of his death in the mid-90s, I think he is someone that if he was still around today, I would not be surprised if he had a backstage job with WWE or AEW.
Right. I was going to say, like, what would his influence have looked like?
Yeah, or TNA even. I could definitely see him maybe even having had a run at some point late, like in the late 90s with WCW or WWE, something of that nature. But I definitely think that his head for wrestling would definitely have kept him around in some capacity if he wanted to. And he would probably definitely have a podcast like everybody else if he was still around today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. And you know what? I wanted to add one thing here, which is we don't have any sponsors for this show, but I'm going to give a cheap plug to a glass maker that I enjoy. It's on Instagram. It's under Skeeter Glassware, which should be pretty self-explanatory on how to spell it. But he does a lot of wrestling-themed glasses. I have my Danhausen glass with me tonight. I have a bunch of glasses. He does a lot of wrestling glasses, but he also does movie glasses. For instance, I have a Death-Proof glass from the Tarantino film. So if you like wrestling glassware, wrestling at all, I highly recommend checking his stuff out. He does sales a lot of times, and his stuff is pretty modestly priced. So anyway.
Well, I would definitely have to do that, even though we have a cabinet full of glasses. But
right, as do I. I have too many. But anyway, this particular Eddie Gilbert Memorial Brawl, it is the second annual one. There was 4 of them in total. They ran from 96 to 99. And as I said, this was the second one. It took place on April 12th, 1997 in Cherry Hill, New Jersey at West High School. And Leonard, I was looking at this venue on the video, and you, by the way, you can access this show if you wanted to have an account with High Spots. Their streaming service offers it. As Leonard mentioned to me, it is also on YouTube for free. So you can view it in any one of those places. But as I was looking at this venue, I was very much reminded, Leonard, of the event we were at fairly recently. Like, it very much looked like that same venue, even though it was in Ohio versus New Jersey.
Yeah, well, a lot of those high schools were the same cookie cutter. They were probably both from the 70s. And oddly enough, there were, I believe, way more people at the show we were at than.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would agree with you. The show we were at was pretty packed. This one, you could see some spaces here and there. Maybe they didn't pack it as tight. Who knows? But this is a NWA, National Wrestling Alliance show, and the commentator is a man by the name of Dave Prazak, which, let's just get this right off the bat. I was mixed on Mr. Prazak, Leonard. I don't know how you felt. There were times I thought that, he was letting his wrestling knowledge shine through. There were other times that I got the impression that he just was like, whatever, I'm here. This guy's
when he did the intro, he said he was going to be joined by color commentators throughout the night, but he was not. It was him by himself the whole time.
Not by anybody. He was doing a Joey Styles.
Yes.
And, there were there were times that he would comment somewhat sarcastically on what was happening in the ring, and you either like that or you don't. Anyway, I was mixed on him.
I would say I was mixed too. There were times I thought he was funny. There was times he wasn't. There was times where I thought he did a great job of calling the action or going over the history. Like, I did not know the history that Dan Severn and Dory Funk Jr. had.
Right.
And he went over that, which I thought was great. But there were other times where I thought he was kind of lapse, where I don't have anything specific. I don't think I wrote down, but where he just didn't call the move right, or was kind of just as you said, maybe just a little bit of what the hell.
Right.
It definitely sounded like it was recorded in post.
Yeah.
He wasn't recording it live. While we're here, I will say all the live mic stuff, you can't understand what anybody is saying.
Yeah, we'll have to kind of assume what was said, or a lot of times Dave Prazak kind of loosely cliff notes it for us.
Yeah, what was said. And then the video is okay, but there's a couple times where it gets a little shaky.
Yeah.
The few times when the crowd gets into it, when Dan Severn comes out, they're stomping, they're clapping, and I think it's shaking the bleachers that the hard camera is sitting on.
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed that as well.
Yeah, and it is, and oddly enough too, for even some of the indie shows that I've gone to, not only do they usually have a hard camera, which this is all from the one hard camera, they usually have a guy on the floor with a handheld, and I didn't see any of that. So
right. Obviously this is an indie show. It wasn't for production or to air on a cable network of any kind. So I mean, you kind of have to accept some of the quality here, and the fact that this is not necessarily the type of star-studded affair you'd pay $30 to $50 for on pay-per-view. And it's as the one Leonard and I were at, it's one of those events that is much better if you're there in person, enjoying it, being able to be close to the talent, all that kind of stuff, be at the convention, which obviously based on some of the commentary they had that day. So it's much better if you're there, but this was still, I think a cool thing to look at in retrospect.
Yeah, and one more thing before we get going, it was promoted by Dennis Corluzzo,
right?
Who did, I believe, all the Gilbert Brawls and other shows in that part of the world. Jim Cornette on his podcast, which I've mentioned I listened to, has talked about Dennis Corluzzo. Cornette's on this show. He did shows for Corluzzo. Just to mention, he was the promoter here. I don't necessarily think it's exploitive of Eddie Gilbert, which I think could easily have been done with this. I definitely think that there is, one, a heart for Gilbert, and two, the idea of we just wanted to kind of put on a show that maybe Eddie would have put on himself.
Right.
Or been part of himself. Yeah. Yeah,
no, absolutely. So let's just go match by match here. I kind of did mine on somewhat of a 5-star scale.
I did also give star ratings.
All right.
And all my notes are handwritten because I was watching on my laptop, and it was just such a pain to cut back and forth between the video and to type. So I just wrote them all.
Well, our first match is the Beach Bullies of Ray Odyssey and the Inferno Kid against the Downward Spiral of Adrian Hall and Twiggy Ramirez. There was a third member. I believe Twiggy Ramirez was on the floor, but there were 3 members of the Downward Spiral.
Yeah.
Now, Leonard, was this for the United States Tag Team titles?
There were titles involved, and I didn't make a note of that.
I think initially I thought it was just the tag titles, and then later on in the broadcast, he referred to them as either the United States tag titles or the North American tag titles. I honestly forget which, but
okay. So according to Wikipedia, because I did have that called up, it was the NWA United States Tag Team titles.
Right,
and it was Adrian Hall and Twiggy Ramirez representing the Downward Spiral versus Ray Odyssey and the Inferno Kid of the Beach Bullies.
Right, and the Beach Bullies would win this match, and this was, to me, just kind of a blah tag match. I gave it 2 stars. It was what it was. I was kind of fascinated. This is 97 after all, and the Downward Spiral, the name is from 9 Inch Nails, obviously, and the costuming and makeup is Marilyn Manson inspired, which that's interesting to look back on now. So I was fascinated by the fact that their characters and makeup were very 90s metal related. But the match itself was what it was. And afterwards, you would have the Brothers East LA, I believe they're called, come out and attack the Beach Bullies. And with a name like the Brothers East LA, you could probably imagine how they're dressed and,
what their gimmick is.
Their whole, yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. I was not as generous as you. I gave it 1.5 stars. I thought it was bad overall and very awkward. It definitely felt like guys copying moves that they saw on TV. There wasn't really it wasn't really a story here of any sort.
Right.
It was just, oh, hey, this is how they do it on the TV. And kind of following that template. I definitely think that Ray Odyssey was the best of the 4.
Right. I would agree.
The best worker to me and his style. I believe it was Twiggy wound up kissing a guy at the very start of it. Or no, it was what, the other guy, Adrian. Yeah, Adrian Hall, because that's an Adrian Street gimmick, is to kiss your opponent.
Right.
To send them off. So he stole that from Adrian Street. I noticed that right off the bat. One thing too, which we did not talk about in the beginning, but I made a note here. I don't know if they mic'd the ring, but the ring is extremely loud and rickety.
Yes, the latter for sure.
Yeah, you can really hear it rattling.
Somebody needed to tighten some of those bolts or whatever.
Just walking across the canvas, it was super rickety. Yeah, as I said, it seemed weird. Again, I'm reading my handwritten notes. I wrote here, Ray Odyssey gets a drop kick, but there seems to be some sort of odd miscommunication, because then they repeat the spot with the Inferno Kid, who wasn't the legal man, doing the same thing Odyssey did, and then getting the pinfall. So the finish came off awkward because of that. So yeah, that was is what it is. I think we were of the same mind. I just wasn't quite as generous as you with it.
Right. Well, our next match is Steve Corino against Mr. Puerto Rico, and Mr. Puerto Rico would win this match pretty easily. Steve Corino obviously is a name that a lot of people probably will recognize. He would go on to have a very fruitful indie career, and he had stints in TNA and has held many championships and was a guest trainer in the WWE Performance Center. He has since retired, but I gotta be honest, when I saw Steve Corino, I was like, is that a young Sean Waltman? Like,
that's exactly what I put that in my notes. I thought he looked just like Waltman. Yeah,
it's weird. I was like Steve Corino. I was like, who is that? Well, anyway, but yeah. So this match, I gave 1 star to. So
oddly enough, I went 2 stars on this one. I like this better than the first match. To me, this is kind of felt like a classic big versus little match.
Right.
To me, it was kind of odd to see Carino here when you knew what he would become later on. I thought he bumped well. He sold well. Mr. Puerto Rico, I thought, got good heat throughout the match. There were a couple spots that I liked. should be mentioned is Puerto Rico had a valet, Destiny, on the outside of the ring, and Carino kisses her at one point. So it's 2 matches in a row with a kiss spot.
Yeah.
But different types. Yeah, I thought the pacing here was decent, and I thought it got a lot better as it went from the beginning. So yeah, I was, it's interesting. I don't think in the past when we've done these that I've done the star ratings. I think just you had. So it'd be interesting to see how our star ratings match up, because so far they are not.
Right. Yeah, they're a little different.
Yeah, I this was a very passable big versus little match, and I think I give a lot of that to Carino, who even at this early stage of his career, I think showed where he was going.
Yeah. And he would go on eventually to be the NWA World Heavyweight Champion at one point. And I should mention the interludes between each match involve a NWA kind of placard with the Battle Royal that we'll see later on, the same clip and music from the Battle Royal, which by the end of the show you'll end up humming the theme.
Yes.
But our next match is the Black Scorpion versus Donnie Deviously, and it is not Ric Flair, unfortunately. But the Black Scorpion would win this match, and the Black Scorpion in this case, we would find out, is Rick Ratchet, I believe, is his name.
Yeah.
And again, I gave this one star. I thought that the work here was very awkward and forgettable. So
yeah, I also gave it a star. I think for what it was trying to do, it was too long. This was all about the storyline, which again, this is where Prazek shined by going over what this was. That apparently Ricky Ratchet was Deviously's manager, or maybe it was the other way around. But anyway, they turn on each other, and Ratchet lost the match where he had to leave the NWA. So this is him coming back. If the Black Scorpion can beat Deviously, then Ratchet can come back. And it is, of course, we find out that it is Ratchet. He winds up getting stripped of his Black Scorpion suit, and he has Ratchet's clothes on underneath, and he's wearing Ratchet's boots with a double R on them.
Right.
And all this. Prazek throughout, this is where he gets sarcastic, because he says it could be Ric Flair. He said he was told the Scorpion was over in Japan. Maybe it's Muda. Maybe it's Inoki.
Yeah.
And he's just being very tongue-in-cheek with that. I thought that some of the work here was decent. Some of it wasn't. But yeah, overall, yeah, awkward, way too long. Ratchet, or Black Scorpion, as it were, was being managed by Tommy Corluzzo, which I'm not sure if that's supposed to be, the Dennis's son or whatever. They didn't go over that, but definitely in relation to the Corluzzo family there. So yeah, again, that is something that I think they could accomplish what they needed to in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I agree.
There's no times on Facebook. There isn't times in the matches. I didn't time the matches, but definitely.
Leonard, you should have gotten your stopwatch out. Come on.
I should have. I thought about that probably around this match, like 3 matches in, and I just wasn't going to go back.
Yeah, you weren't going to go back and watch it again.
Yeah, I know.
Our next match is Tommy Gilbert versus Ian Rotten, and I believe this is Eddie's father.
Eddie's father, yes.
And so Ian Rotten was, obviously somebody that, made a name for himself in ECW. And I mean, my main memory of Ian Rotten is the Taipei death match that he had with Axel Rotten, where like those two crazy MFers dipped their hands in glass and went at it. So this here is clearly just a clash of styles. Now, I gave this 2.5 stars because they tried, I think, hard here.
Yes.
So I was tried to be a little bit more generous, but it was clearly a clash of styles. Ian Rotten tried to kind of assimilate to the Tommy Gilbert style. Now, I don't know how old Tommy Gilbert was here. He was obviously an older gentleman.
He was 57.
Okay, so, and he I would say, to his credit, he does a good job, but he looks 57. So, so the match was fine for what it was. I thought the submission victory for Tommy Gilbert was actually kind of neat with the whole knee submission hold that it gets on there at the end. But obviously, Ian Rotten was not known for his technical amateur wrestling skills in the ring, but he tried his best here. So 2.5.
You know what? I agree with you. I also gave this 2.5 stars. It should also be mentioned, I didn't catch the guy's name, but Tommy Gilbert has a manager who looks like a doofus 12-year-old playing cowboy. Dumbest looking SOB I've ever seen. I thought this was going to be a hardcore match. And when they start off and they're actually grappling, I was very impressed with how Ian Rotten was at least able to hold his own against Tommy.
Right. Well, when you hear Ian Rotten's name, you immediately think, oh, this is going to be hardcore.
Hardcore match. And Tommy is definitely walking Ian Rotten through the match. And, Tommy Gilbert was a guy who wrestled for decades. I was not familiar with him because, again, this was back, we're talking 60s, 70s. But Tommy definitely is a guy that knows what he's doing in the ring. Even at the age of 57, he can put a match together. He knows how to put a match together. So I was quite surprised by the wrestling here. And thought the match was pretty good overall. I've got to give Ian Rotten credit for trying to work an old school match and doing it pretty well. He hits a butterfly suplex at one point that I thought was really good. I get them wanting to give Tommy Gilbert some time. I still think this match felt a little bit long. I think it could have been shorter. The leg lock that he wins with, I thought was kind of weird, but but on the other hand, it's something that you just don't see, that type of leg lock. I don't think it was a botch or anything. I just think that was what he was going for. And there was work on the knee throughout. So, kudos for Ian wanting to work a Tommy Gilbert match instead of making Tommy Gilbert work an Ian Rotten match. I think that was the way to go. So that's my favorite, not my favorite match of the show, but my favorite match so far.
Right, yeah. The next match would be King Kong Bundy versus Don Montoya, and I gave this a dud rating. This is 97, very much well past King Kong Bundy's prime, but one of the things I remember hearing from various podcasts, King Kong Bundy quoted like he gets a lot of business at conventions because he still looks like the King Kong Bundy that you remember from the WrestleMania 2 VHS cover. Yeah. So when he comes out here, it's King Kong Bundy. It's the same outfit, it's the same look, and he wins this very quickly. And the best part about this match is the 5-count pin. So
I thought it was funny. He came out to the Married with Children theme song.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I forgot to take that note down.
He appeared on 2 episodes of the series. Years before this. I looked it up. I was like, why is he coming out to this? He appeared on 2 episodes several years before this. I think it was, maybe in the late 80s. So that made me laugh. We're going to have him come out to the Married with Children theme. Also, I question, was he working face?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I feel like he was working
they refer to the other guy as Dirty Don Montoya. I believe.
Yeah. This was pretty short. The fact that it was short and it had a very nostalgic finish with the 5 count, I went half a star. I didn't quite go dud. I think it accomplished what it wanted to do. Put Bundy out there, let him get the nostalgia pop, let him beat Bundy-ish, and get out of there quickly. So
Bundy-ish. It should be that should be a way to describe other people. Bundy.
Yeah, he was very Bundy-ish. So I think for what they wanted to do, I went half a star. I didn't quite go dud. I almost went dud, but I was like, you know what? They did what they wanted. I'll be a little lenient.
All right. Our next match is a 3-way. It is Lance Diamond versus Reckless Youth versus the Cheetah Master. And for me, this was probably the best match on the card. Mm-hmm. And, the rules here, this wasn't strictly a triple threat match. This was more akin to, there was a match in WCW, I forget what show, that involved Flair and I believe Sting and maybe Muda or somebody else, where it was, kind of weird rules. There were 3 people, but
it was Luger. It was Sting and Flair and Luger.
Yeah,
and a triple threat, but you could tag in and out.
Right, and that's not what they do here. But
no, not what they do here.
They have to, You have to pin both people. Like, it's not just one pin victory.
Yeah, well, oddly enough, it starts out as a one-on-one between Reckless Youth and Lance Diamond, and they don't explain why. They might have on the live mic. I don't know. But they wrestle for I think it's only 2 minutes. It's it's 2 minutes one-on-one, and then Cheetah Kid can get involved. And Cheetah Master. I wrote down, I kept calling, I think Cheetah Kid is a dude. I think there is a guy named Cheetah Kid.
Can we talk about how this was the worst name on the card?
The Cheetah Master?
The Cheetah Master? Come on. What
Cheetah
does that
Master,
even mean? What?
Prazik mentioned that he was the Jimmy Snuka of the 90s. That was what Cheetah Master was going for. He felt like great value.
Snuka didn't call himself the Fiji Islands Master.
Yes, the Fiji Islands Master. He felt like a great value jungle kid.
Right.
Who's playing AEW? Yeah, Jungle
Boy,
Jungle Kid, Jungle Man. I'm getting myself all mixed up. I do want to mention that Lance Diamond's manager Royce Prophet looks like Paul Heyman playing the Penguin.
Yeah, that's true.
Reckless Youth has a valet, Miss Patricia, on the outside.
And Reckless Youth is a name that we've heard before.
Yeah.
He had a pretty long career, and I forget which podcast it was. Maybe it was Bruce Pritchard's, where there was the idea of flirting with him being in one of the major companies, but it didn't really happen for him. But yeah, he was clearly a good talent, and this match really picked up as it went along. The longer it went, the more all three guys really seemed to click. So I like the work by all three, even though it was really hard to get used to somebody being called the Cheetah Master. You have a guy named Reckless Youth and Lance Diamond, both, fairly, and then the Cheetah Master, which I don't know why I was hung up on that, Leonard, but I was. So I gave it 3.5 stars.
I gave it 3.25 stars. And I don't think we mentioned this was for the NWA North American Heavyweight Championship.
Yes.
I think the weird start kind of blew me a little bit off on that. Mentioning the belt, Miss Patricia, Reckless Youth's manager, comes out wearing the belt. And I thought that was neat. I've never seen the valet or the manager wearing the belt. And it actually kind of came off I liked it. I liked the idea of she was wearing the belt because she was the manager, she was the mouthpiece, she was the cocky part of the duo there. So I thought that actually worked. Yeah, I mean, I thought there were some really good triple threat spots here. It was a very solid three-way, nothing great, but good pacing and mixing of the guys. Dave Prazak points out several times that Lance Diamond breaks up covers when that doesn't make sense because it's elimination.
Yeah.
So why not let the one guy pin the other guy and then get out?
Right.
He was playing the rules very well because there was times where he took a break where he's just I'm going to sit over here and get a breather and let them fight and let them go at it. So he played those roles very well. I don't know if we mentioned, but Lance Diamond wins and gets the title here. Reckless Youth gets a nice frog splash. I thought the ending was a little anticlimactic and a little sloppy, and it was confusing in spots with this match about who was doing what. But yeah, generally very solid. I mean, we're just a quarter star off on our rating. And I think for me, it was because I didn't understand why they were doing the 2 minutes at the start between Diamond and Reckless Youth. I didn't understand why that was just a thing. Could they pinned each other in that 2 minutes? And why 2 minutes? Why not 5 minutes?
This was kind of before all the other companies really.
They started doing three ways. I think WCW was doing the 3 ways with the luchadors at this point, but not a lot of others. ECW, I think, was doing 3 ways at this point as well.
Yeah. Our next match is Marty Jannetty versus Harley Lewis. And Marty Jannetty, I don't believe I've seen him with a goatee.
It's Mirror Universe Marty Jannetty.
What did you call it?
It's Mirror Universe from Star Trek.
There you go.
Lots of
goatee.
Like that. It's a goatee Mirror Universe Marty Jannetty.
Yeah. He's he looks odd with a goatee, but I gave this one a dud. Doesn't last long. You can barely register that this match was even here.
Marty was being paid by the minute. I don't know. I also gave this a dud. There was a good suplex on the floor. That was about the only spot that I could mention. It started hot, and then I was surprised because Marty could still go at this point. He was only a couple years out of WWE.
You mean to say he hadn't drifted into batshit crazy territory just
What? Not quite yet, and his ankles weren't totally botched yet. And this was pre-Heroes of Wrestling, which we rebooked and talked about.
Right.
So I was surprised that this didn't go longer. I mean, if you've got Marty Jannetty, get something out of him. So.
Right. Okay, so our next match is not the main event, but it is for the NWA World Heavyweight title. And
it should have been the main event, I'll tell you that.
I agree. And our reigning champion is Dan the Beast Severn against Dory Funk Jr. And what a weird, couple of names to put on a card. But you know what? These two guys actually, their styles, or at least the style that Dory Funk Jr. was working with at his age, meshed pretty well together. I mean, you just got done seeing a more fast-paced triple threat, and now you're seeing a slower-paced, old school fashioned match. Dan Severn, obviously a legendary mixed martial arts fighter, and his stint in pro wrestling was not great because he really wasn't good on the mic, and his personality was such that it was kind of hard to make that shine through, at least in his WWF run.
Yeah.
But he seems to be more at home here. Now, he would be the NWA World Heavyweight Champion twice, and just a little trivia, he would be the World Heavyweight Champion up until TNA would start, and he would be stripped of the title because he wasn't going to be in TNA. So, but anyway, he was a part of the main event of the first Eddie Gilbert Memorial Brawl, and he's here defending his title against Dory Funk Jr. And I thought, even though this is a slower paced match, I thought that they both worked pretty well. The crowd seemed to be okay with this style. They seemed to be watching it pretty good. Yeah. The biggest knock on this match is the fact that it's a double countout, which I thought was really somewhat stupid. I find it hard to believe that Dory Funk Jr. wouldn't, take the loss here or something. But I gave it 3 stars. I thought both guys did pretty well and worked to their strengths, considering the age gap.
Yeah, I didn't look up Dan Severn's age, but Dory Funk Jr. was 56 here. When he comes out, his jacket is advertising his website. So I thought that was great that Dory Funk is online in 1997.
Yeah.
With a website. You know what? I think Dory Funk should have won, at least for publicity reasons only. Imagine.
I'd have been okay with that too.
Yeah, imagine back then, especially when the NWA World Heavyweight title had completely been forgotten, that Dory Funk winds up winning it.
Right.
Decades later, after he had originally held it the previous time. Dan Severn, I thought, showed some great power here. There's a couple spots where he just kind of deadlifts Dory Funk. There's one where he lifts him out of an arm bar and just sets him on the top rope.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a really powerful spot for him. There's a leg lock into the ropes that is nicely worked. There's a lot of mat-based grappling with Severn showing his power throughout. I didn't think Dory Funk looked bad at all, given his age. Right. The style of the match. It was a very clean bout. I like that Funk gets kind of edgier as they go.
Yeah.
Like, throws Severn to the floor. So there's a nice buildup of the tempers and the tension.
Yeah, I was just about to say, there's a very subtle build of, like, they're getting more heated as they go along.
Yeah, it's never brawly, but you get into a few spots. Like there's one where Funk slams Severn's head into the table on the outside. Severn slams Funk into the table later on. I love how Severn reverses the butterfly suplex into a bridge. That was a really nice spot there. And again, the double count out is what soured it for me. I went higher than you. I gave it 3 3/4 stars. If this had a finish, I probably would have went 4.
All right. Well, our next match is a 20-man battle royal, and I gave this a dud. This was ridiculous, and the person who wins it is the I guess the C grade Ultimate Warrior ripoff called the Icon.
I'm gonna blow your mind. So the Icon wins this, and also in this match, you may have noticed, was a guy that they referred to as Big Slam Vader.
Yes.
Around this time in Zanesville, Ohio, in the basement of Seacrest Auditorium, an indie wrestling show came through, and the main event was Big Slam Vader versus the Iron Warrior, who was Icon.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Wow.
So I saw these dudes live, and they were promoting it as if this was Big Van Vader and the Ultimate Warrior.
Of course.
But, they have to change their names. They can't change those names. But as soon as you get there, you go, that's not them. That's not them.
Yeah, I mean, this was not a good battle royal. You don't know who half these guys are. Dave Prazak tries, air quotes, to explain who they are. The ending of this is botched because I believe there's two guys left with the Icon, and one of them is Don Montoya, who has trouble getting over the rope. And, this was horrible to me.
Yeah. Montoya was the guy that Bundy squashed, and he may be the worst worker that we see throughout this show. Yeah, I gave it a dud as well. Again, it's one of those things I think kind of accomplished what it wanted to do, which is get a bunch of people on the card or give some other people, a second shot. And to put the Icon over, why they wanted to put him over, I don't know. But this was interesting to me because I went, I saw those guys. So. Right.
Yeah, I did notice Big Slam Vader, and I did remember that you had mentioned him, and I was trying to remember in what context, but it was cool.
We have talked about that indie show before, yeah.
Yeah. Our next match is Doug Gilbert versus Nature Boy Buddy Landell in a street fight, and
and he's got Jim Cornette with him.
Yes, thank you. So,
and is it Francine?
No, it's
the other one.
Dawn Marie.
Dawn Marie, the one who isn't Francine. Yes.
So, Leonard, why don't you tell us what you thought of this one?
Sure. I like the Marilyn Monroe tie that Jim Cornette wears.
Yes, I forgot to write that down.
That's a cool tie.
I didn't have my notes with me when I was watching this particular match, and that is an amazing tie that I need to have.
Yes. And then as soon as Dawn Marie comes out, the camera does a zoom in on her ass.
Yes, it does. I was like that, and then it was like quickly the guy realized what he was doing, and like moved back away.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, this is an indie show. Like, you don't need to impress us with your camera work. You just, if you want to stay there on her body, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Why not? Give us a little bit of a thrill. I thought that was kind of funny. Again, Buddy Landell is on the mic, and here's the thing that threw me about this match. So Buddy Landell demands a street fight. So it wasn't booked as a street fight, but both guys are already in street clothes.
Right.
So they were going to have a regular match wearing street clothes until Buddy Landell made the challenge. I thought this was actually a nice change of pace from what we have seen on the card up to this point. This should have been like maybe Doug Gilbert and Eden Rotten, being that it's a street fight. I would maybe put Landell with Tommy Gilbert in a regular match. So I may have switched dance partners there. There's a broken table, which is a repetitive spot because that's what Severn and Funk did. So I'm like, I believe this is probably Cornettism that I picked up that I know you don't like, but like not everybody needs to break a table.
Right.
One match, you break a table, that's cool. Don't keep doing it. This is an okay brawl, but it's not very brutal. It's not a type of a street fight brawl to me. A lot of shots look very fake, very weak. Both guys bleed. There's a leg drop through a second table. A third table gets broken. This felt very long, monotonous to me. The finish is poor. It's a roll-up on a collision with Jim Cornette.
Yeah.
For a street fight, that's just a terrible finish. I wanted to like this more than I did, but I felt it was very sloppy with a bad finish. And at 2 stars, I think I'm being generous.
Yeah, I went 2 stars as well, and I agree with everything you said. This is one of those street fights where they do a lot of moving around to insinuate that hardcore things are happening, and really, they're just kind of moving around in the crowd. I love it when the street fights are signified as street fights because they wrestle into the crowd. And I don't know if we had mentioned that Doug Gilbert. Yeah, you mentioned the finish. Doug Gilbert won this. I mean, they blade really early, and it didn't really make sense to me at the time.
No.
I agree. I thought that this was overly long, and there wasn't really a ton of memorable spots in it. But as we will find out, Buddy Landell's night is not over.
No.
Our next match is Flash Funk versus Ace Darling. And, Flash Funk has the entire Flash Funk garb on, and, he does the whole entrance that you would expect. And
of course, he's better than his Too Cold Scorpio, and I was kind of surprised he was doing the Flash Funk gimmick here. But I'm guessing I didn't go back and review the time periods, but I'm guessing this coincided with him being Flash Funk in the WWF.
Yeah, that's probably a good bet. So I gave this match 2.5 stars. Flash Funk is one of those guys that was with major companies, never really stayed around a long enough time to really make a mark. But, even when he was on the indie circuit, which it felt like he was for a long time, he could still go. Like, he could still do his moves. And he was one of those early high flyers that, did a lot of, as Leonard likes to say, flippy-do stuff.
Flippy-do stuff.
Yeah, and, so I thought the work here was fine overall. And you would have Buddy Landell coming out to interfere for reasons that are unknown, which would eventually have the ending be in Flash Funk's favor.
Yeah, I actually hated this match. I gave it 0.5 star. I really hated it. I really hated it. The grappling to start, I felt, was very awkward, off balance. These guys were just not on the same page at all. I figured it would be more high flying and faster paced than it was. There's a leg lock work by Funk in the middle that I thought really bogged down the match. The tumbleweed that he hits should have been the finisher. But then Buddy Landell, as you mentioned, comes back out and distracts Funk after a moonsault, which I thought was really stupid. And then Landell hits Ace Darling with a chair right in front of the referee, which should have been a DQ, and it wasn't. And Funk gets the pin while using the ropes for leverage, with the referee sees and lets happen.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this match actively insulted my intelligence by how.
Well, you know what? You convinced me. I'll knock my rating down a full star to 1.5 stars.
Okay. I gave it a 0.5 star. I just don't think these guys work together, and I thought the ending was really bad.
All right. Well, our main event is Goldust versus Derek Domino.
And I'm very curious to see how we rated this one.
Well, yeah. So Goldust, Dustin Rhodes, is one of those enigmas in wrestling, in that it feels like he gets better with age. You can't say that about everybody. There are people that stay good consistently, but he is really still very good in the ring. He doesn't work AEW all the time because he has his own wrestling school now. But when he does wrestle in AEW, there are always matches that I look forward to seeing. But this particular match, I don't think he worked very well with Mr. Domino. This was very awkward to me. I mean, he comes out with the Goldust gimmick, the makeup and the music, and unfortunately Marlene is not there. I don't know where their relationship was at this point.
Yeah.
But she was not there. And Mr. Prazak let us know that very early on.
Well, he said, I'm guessing Marlene is not in the building.
Yeah. So I gave this match a star. I didn't like it. I thought that there were some, there were some messed up spots that I did. So this was kind of a weird main event to use when you have Dory Funk Jr. and Dan Severn in the middle of the card. I realize Goldust is probably at that time the biggest star, but still, I think you want to send people home with your title match. But yeah, so I didn't like this one.
Yeah, they probably didn't use the title match as the main event because it was a non-finish.
Right.
So I don't know. This is one thing that maybe I would rework or take a look at what I would have done. Yeah, Goldust was definitely bored here. He did not want to be there.
I feel like you could tell on his way out that he didn't want to be there.
Yeah. I went star and a quarter, and I think that quarter might have been a little liberal. This is a very lackluster main event. I agree with you. It goes on last because Goldust at this moment was the biggest name that they had.
Right.
To use. And, I'm pretty sure that Dustin had worked with Eddie Gilbert. So that would be, a reason to use him here. One thing I noticed when I got to this point was it seems like in every match, everybody goes to the outside at some point, but then don't do anything. They go outside and come back in like almost immediately. This match was very monotonous to me and very repetitive. They repeat table and chair spots from the street fight, and this is not a street fight. The ref gets shoved at one point. That's not a DQ. You mentioned botches. The one I noticed was Goldust goes for the kneeling punch thing he does and whiffs.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
Then he just kind of realigns and nails it. They go back into the crowd, which should have been a count out. They use a chair in the ring, which should have been a DQ. There's the win is Goldust getting a DDT on the chair, and Derek Domino does bleed in this. So yeah, I went star and a quarter. It was just, I don't know why this wasn't a street fight or a hardcore match or what have you, given things. But I think what dragged us down was the fact that Goldust mailed it in completely and totally. This is probably one of the worst performances I've ever seen out of Dustin Rhodes.
Yeah, no, I would agree. So overall, this was very much an indie show. As I said at the top, this was one of those shows that I'm sure was very entertaining if you were there to watch it on YouTube. Like, there wasn't a whole lot to remember here. I think the thing that I walked away being the most surprised by is the fact that Dory Funk Jr. looked like he was 80 and still worked well in the ring.
Yeah.
I think that was what surprised me the most. I was like, Dan Severn and Dory Funk Jr., that's not really the dream match you really want to see, but it was fine for what it was. So yeah, it's worth mentioning. I was glancing here. There was a third and fourth Eddie Gilbert Memorial Brawl, and just some notes, Leonard. I don't know if you looked at any of these. In the third annual Brawl, it moved to Philly. And the first match involved a guy whose name was Overweight Lover, which is an amazing name.
Yeah.
It's an amazing name. And Dan Severn would be the champion here, too. He would defend against Franz Schumann for it was the NWA World Heavyweight title versus the CWA World Middleweight Championship. You would also see Sid Vicious against King Kong Bundy at that one. And so that one was very much star-studded, but you could tell why the fourth one was the end, because NWA doesn't seem to be associated with it.
No.
There's really nobody of note other than King Kong Bundy. And
George Steele is there, defeats a guy named Jack Hammer.
Yeah, the Public Enemy is in the main event.
Yeah, Tommy Gilbert and Cronus go up against the Public Enemy.
Biggie Biggs, which I don't know what Biggie Biggs looks like, but if that's not a Notorious B.I.G. ripoff, then he missed the boat, whoever this guy is. So I'm going to try to pull up a picture of Biggie Biggs. It'll be interesting to see what happens when I Google that.
Try to find that. Looking over this show, I almost want to rebook it because, I would move Severn and Funk to the main event, definitely. Yeah. I think I would probably make Steve Carino versus Marty Jannetty a match and give that time.
You could definitely move things around with just the talent that you have and make the show a little bit better. Like, I'm curious to hear, maybe I'll try to track down Dave Prazak. Maybe we could interview him here. I'd be curious to know why Marty Jannetty's match was so short. Like,
right.
Something or,
Yeah, something came up. I don't know. I would probably, as I mentioned earlier, I would do Tommy Gilbert versus Buddy Landell and Ian Rotten versus Doug Gilbert and make that the street fight.
Yeah.
I'd probably take Cheetah Master out of that triple threat and just make that Reckless Youth versus Lance Diamond.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I would have done that. And then I don't know. I think a lot of the other guys, you could, keep the Battle Royal. That's fine. You want to get a lot of guys on the card. Everything else, I don't know. I think I might have made a few things shorter.
Yeah.
The Bundy squash is fine because you want to get the names on there. And anything I don't think we talked about was there is a segment where it's Harley race and he's presenting some sort of plaque to the Gilbert family. But because the audio is so garbled, I have no idea what was happening.
Right. Yeah. We don't know who was in the ring other than Harley Race. But yeah, no, that you're right. That did happen. I'm glad you mentioned it. So yeah, this was fun to watch. And who knows, we'll probably find another random indie show down the road to review. But it was cool to see this, and the fact that we have the Eddie Gilbert connection with our Continental Championship Wrestling.
Yeah, and I know we mentioned the Eddie Gilbert Memorial Show at some point, and I remember how that came up. So
yeah,
and I think we wound up watching this one because this is the one that's available. As you mentioned, it's available in high spots.
Exactly. I mean, there might be random matches from the other ones out there in the ether, but the full shows of those other ones are not available for whatever reason. So for Leonard, my name is Chad, and please check out our other videos, our stupid questions, our random match reviews, and we are also available on Apple Podcasts and or Spotify. Hit the like button on our YouTube video and subscribe to our content. We appreciate all the help, and we will see you next time, and Alexa will see you out.